Last night at this time, we examined the riots that erupted in the nation's capital following the murder of Dr. King. 50 years later, and you might not recognize the very same neighborhoods. Most of the businesses are recent. Many of the residents are young and white. A lot of racial issues remain a half century after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Total shock, total transformation.
We have parents that bring their kids here to show them how cool they are. And we have kids that bring their parents here to show them what DC looks like.
If the neighborhood is thriving, and if you'll come out on a Friday or Saturday night after midnight, you'll think you're on Broadway.
By any measure, DC is on a roll. 1,000 new residents moving into the city every month. And they're moving into former riot corridors, too, like Columbia Heights and 14th Street.
And a lot of them are coming in this area because you got all these brand new buildings and whatnot, you know, and then we have a lot of new commerce up here. We got a movie theater and stuff like that, nightclubs, you know, so it's a nice area.
Hello, good.
Rick Lee is owner of Lee's Flowers, and he really appreciates the new business.
A lot of foot traffic, right. Saturdays and Sundays, folk are just, it's like a promenade, you know, there's up and down the street.
50 years ago, Rick and his family were huddled inside the shop, ready to fight off any of the rioters who were on the outside, still angry because Martin Luther King had been killed.
We didn't know whether we would get burned out or not because we were in here all night long trying to protect the place. You know, I have a shotgun up in here, and we wrote Soul Brother on the window and whatnot, and so we were like ready in case something jumped off.
And just a few steps down U Street, Ben's Chili Bowl and the Industrial Bank of Washington, those two businesses were African-American owned, and they were also spared that night.
The area declined, the area went into a decline when those businesses didn't reopen, and the middle class began to move away.
For us, we just never left. And for us, our customers never left. Through the riots, through the drugs.
B. Dole Mitchell is president of the bank, founded in 1934 by his grandfather.
After the riots, you had businesses that moved. You know, the nightclubs and the restaurants weren't there anymore. And then the drugs set in because you had lots of poverty in the 70s.
For decades after the riots, drugs and prostitution were a big part of the economy. Unemployment had gone through the roof. Blacks who could fled to the suburbs. From 1968 until 1998, the city's overall population, get this, dropped by 200,000 people.
Here where we are right now at 14th and V, even up to 2005, when we first opened Busboys and Poets, the block between 14th and 13th Street was actually crack houses.
Andy Shalal, an Iraqi-American, moved to the U.S. with his family back in 1966. They lived in Arlington, Virginia, but he, as a young teenager, managed to sneak into the district.
Coming to 14th Street was not something you tell your mother you're gonna do. You know, it was a place for drug dealing, open market drug dealing, prostitution.
But why did you want a business right here?
Well, all of this history was being lost, I think, as things were changing in the city. Lots of people moving in that didn't know anything about civil rights in the city, that didn't know anything about the relationship of DC to the civil rights movement.
Andy Shalal called his restaurant Busboys and Poets to honor some of the great black poets and playwrights of the Harlem Renaissance, people like Langston Hughes.
But it was also known as Chocolate City, which was a city predominantly black and has a very strong black culture, a city of music, a city of poetry, a city of literature and reading. And I just felt like somebody needs to preserve that.
He wanted his restaurants, now he's got quite a few, to be places where people of different cultures could gather.
Honestly, I couldn't get any partners because no one would buy into the idea of what I was trying to do because it's so unique and so personal. For me, being not on the white team or not on the black team either made me kind of uniquely situated that I can actually look at the absurdity of race, the ridiculousness of race in America. And for me, Martin Luther King's assassination 50 years ago was my introduction to race in America.
The one financial institution willing to lend money to Busboys and Poets in the beginning was the Industrial Bank of Washington, the same bank that kept Ben's Chili Bowl and Lee's Flowers afloat during the tough times. Expensive housing going up all over the place. Why is it so expensive?
Demand. You still have 1,000 people moving into the District of Columbia every month.
The district's population has grown. It's now at 700,000 residents. But 50 years after Martin Luther King's assassination and the riots, this is no longer Chocolate City. Blacks are no longer a majority of the population. There is no racial majority. That bothers a lot of people, but not everybody.
Race determines everything in America, even today. It determines where you live, it determines your health, it determines your wealth, it determines who your friends are, it determines where you go out to eat. Everything is revolved around race. And yet we continue to deny that race is something that we just imagine in our heads. It's not. It's very real and very effective, and it affects people in a very, very serious way. And unless we talk about it, unless we actually open up the dialogue, we will never become that post-racial society that everybody dreams about.